Welcome back to Bi-Monthly Bull, the only news show on the internet that comes out every day, every single day, and has never missed a single episode. While other, less trustworthy news sources like Philip DeFranco, Drama Alert, or Fred have frequent breaks in between uploads, Bi-Monthly Bull is committed to bringing you the truth all day, every day, whether you like it or not. In today's episode, like most news services, we are going to fill you with an unbridled sense of superiority and the feeling that if someone else doesn't agree with 100% of your beliefs, then that person is your enemy. If that offends you, well, I have just one thing to say. Facts don't care about your feelings, and we don't even care about facts. Let's be honest, the world burns and we make money. I'm your host, Lewis Spears. Let's break down the last 2 weeks. Starting off with a rapid-fire recap, yet another millionaire housing investor has been implicated in Jeffrey Epstein's child sex ring. The FBI has confirmed wealthy real estate mogul Tom Nook was found on multiple flight logs to Jeffrey Epstein's sex island. When asked for a response, Tom Nook reportedly said, he will now be serving life in prison and is being forced to pay a 35 million bell fine. Good riddance. Popular children's author and annoying woman on Twitter, J.K. Rowling, has been cancelled yet again for insisting that there are biological differences between the sexes. I, as always, completely agree with the angry mob. There are no biological differences between the sexes. In fact, I actually bumped into a trans woman at my local prostate specialist and literally could not tell the difference between her and me. We're exactly the same. Stop being a bigot. And now Elon Musk has written on Twitter that he's taken the red pill. Judging by his inability to make eye contact for a 3-hour podcast and the scientific information provided to me by rugby league players' wives, I have to assume that that red pill was pumped full of vaccine. With the recap over, it's time for our top stories of the week. With coronavirus restrictions around the world making public gatherings like funerals largely impossible, the rise of virtual events has begun. Instead of in-person funerals, many families are deciding to host virtual funerals online via Zoom. Initially, we tried holding them on Grand Theft Auto, but they kept getting crashed by green aliens, which was very annoying. Unfortunately, Zoom has proven to be a very insecure platform, and many YouTubers are exploiting that fact to film viral content. By insecure platform, I don't mean a 16-year-old girl wearing Windsor Smiths, by the way, although YouTubers seem to love exploiting those too.
We are gathered here today to celebrate the life of Luke Kidgel, who tragically passed away at a very young age.
Hey guys, what's going on in this chat?
Who is that?
I have
Who is
fucking AIDS.
Sorry, who is that?
Where's Mr. Beast?
Who's Mr.
Is
Beast?
Mr. Breast in this chat?
Who is
Hello?
this person?
Mr.
Did someone
Breast,
give out
give
the-
me
Who's
$50,000.
Stop this!
Now, virtual funerals aren't the only industry being invaded by YouTubers at the moment. A side effect of the popularity of these Zoom call crashing videos, most university classes now have more YouTubers in them than students. In fact, by the end of the pandemic, scientists are predicting that scientific prediction will mostly be performed by YouTubers who fraudulently acquired PhDs while they were trying to copy a 2Mad video. Over to Australia now. In Victoria, Black Lives Matter protests have resulted in a massive spike of coronavirus cases. As you can see in these photos, the protesters are not wearing masks. No one is even adhering to social distancing guidelines. And hang on a second, that's not the protest, that's the biggest shopping centre in the country. Why the fuck is that open? Prime Minister Scott Morrison responded to the Black Lives Matter protests by urging Australians not to import issues from from overseas. Ironic coming from a man who, when Australia did have issues, exported himself overseas. When demonstrators pointed out to Mr. Morrison that the protests were about the very Australian and very real issue of Aboriginal incarceration rates, Mr. Morrison responded by saying he was sick of climate change extremists ranting about environmental issues like how we treat our flora and fauna. Of course, Scott Morrison didn't actually say any of those things, but fuck me, he's acting like it. Over to Melbourne news now, where popular nightclub promoter Pinga Pete has been reported missing by his family. The famous ecstasy addict was last seen in the smokers area of a nightclub before quarantine and never made it home. Crossing live now to Pinga Pete's best friend and roommate, Lewis Spears. Mr. Spears, thanks for joining us. Are you concerned about your friend's whereabouts?
No, he was never my friend, and he's definitely not my roommate either. I just rented a warehouse one day, and he showed up at nighttime thinking that it was some kind of like underground rave or warehouse party, and then he just never left. So he was actually very annoying.
So you're happy that Pinga Pete is missing?
Yeah, I'm really happy he's gone, actually. My life's quieter, there's no more arguments every day about useless shit. It's actually really, really good. I'm quite happy.
Mr. Spears, where were you on the night of Mr. Pete's disappearance?
Oh, get fucked. I had nothing to do with his disappearance. Why would you even ask me that question? This interview is over.
No, it is not, Mr. Spears.
Well, it doesn't matter what you think, mate. I'm editing the video. I can just cut to the next story whenever I want.
Actually, I'm editing the video.
Yeah, but I'm your boss, so just cut to the next one.
Okay.
Fuck, yes! And finally tonight, it's on to our top story. It's time for a brief history of the country formerly known as CHAZ. The Capitol Hill Organised Protest, or CHOP, or CHAZ, is or was a police-free zone set up by peaceful protesters or murderous dictators, depending on whether you watch CNN or Fox. The zone, formerly known as Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, was renamed to CHOP after one of the demonstrators accidentally read a book and found out what the word autonomous actually mean. Now, to reclaim that title, instead of actually becoming autonomous, because let's be honest, that would destroy their entire area, CHAZ scientists have invented an autonomous robot that will replace law enforcement. Initially, the peacekeeping robot was designed to be completely colorblind. This would be to prevent any racial bias from occurring at all. Unfortunately though, the robot being colorblind meant that it saw the entire world as either white or black, and as a result, it destroyed exactly 50% of the zone. But after an internal investigation, the robot has been placed on paid leave. It will receive no consequences and a promotion. Despite many setbacks and a single rebrand, CHOP became a movement to stand against racism and police brutality in America. Leading by example in the fight to stop discrimination against others based on where they're from, CHOP protesters immediately established borders, built a wall, and discriminated against others based on where they're from. Shortly after that, as predicted by everyone on the fucking planet, the formerly leaderless anarchist zone was quickly taken over by the very first cunt who showed up with a gun. Raz Simone, a rapper whose official uniform seems to be diamonds and luxury clothing, quickly rose up to be the de facto leader of the leaderless zone. Now you might be wondering, what qualifications does this random guy have to run an entire country? And the answer is, he's got a fucking gun, you idiot. That's literally how this shit works. Anyway, besides, Raz Simone drives a Tesla, he's covered in jewels, and he owns several million-dollar properties. If you look through the history of the world, nobody runs a revolution better than a guy who takes your shit for the people and keeps his shit in the bank. Now, if you're a rational person, you might be wondering, how is this zone even allowed to form in the first place? Well, the mayor of Seattle was largely supportive of the protests and even the zone itself. That is, until the protesters showed up at her house and she signed an executive order to get them the fuck out of there. Yes, let the peasants protest around the peasants and ruin their own businesses. Just don't let them anywhere near my house. The President of the United States didn't do much either. I mean, the only thing he did was tell the protesters what his favourite TV show is 7 times in a month. But the real downfall of the CHOP zone and the protesters themselves was their inability to create a better system without law enforcement. Even the broken system that they have today is better than what they set up. Now, don't get me wrong, the police aren't perfect. In fact, they're far from it. Even China looks at America's police force and goes, oh shit, those cops are crazy. Real recognize real though, right China? But the minute the CHOP zone was established, crime rates within that zone spiked dramatically. In less than a month, there were 5 shootings inside that zone, with the most recent resulting in the death of a 16-year-old African-American teenager and the shooting of his 14-year-old black friend. For a protest that is against the unacceptably high rate that police kill unarmed African Americans, it truly is a shame to see crazy hippies outperform police. I'm Lewis Spears. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.